There we are. All right, good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us for Texas RE's Cyber and Physical Security Workshop. My name is Thad Crow. I am our Communications and Training Coordinator, and I promise I won't take up too much of your time. Just a quick introduction to get you settled. First up, though, I've got to start us with our antitrust admonition. I would like to remind everybody in here that Texas RE strictly prohibits persons participating in our activities from using their participation as a forum for engaging in practices or communications that violate antitrust laws. We have approved antitrust guidelines available on our website, and if you believe that antitrust laws have been violated at one of our meetings, or if you have any questions about them, you can contact our general counsel. Notice this meeting was posted on our website, and it is being held in public, evidenced by the cameras in the back. Participants should keep in mind that listeners may include members of the press, representatives from various governmental authorities, and industry stakeholders. This one is for our in-room personnel. In case of an emergency, our muster point is in the parking lot right outside of this building. This is a map of the conference center. You can follow any one of these arrows to find an exit out of here, or you can just bust through one of these doors here. Now, in case of lunch, we're going to follow this map in reverse. That little red point with the man on it where it starts, that's where lunch is going to be served. So when we break for lunch, that is where we will head to. Now, our audience today, we got a full room, but it's like an iceberg. Only 10% of our audience is visible in here. The rest is online, so to make sure that questions are asked in an orderly fashion and make sure that everybody gets to participate, all questions will need to go through Slido. Slido is an online platform. To get to Slido, you can go to slido.com and enter today's participant code and enter TXRE, or you can scan the QR code on the right hand of the screen there. When we get to questions, we'll have this information posted again, so please don't call out, don't talk to the presenters. It's going to make things difficult for folks online. So please use this for asking questions. Now, here is our training page. To get to Texas RE's training page, you follow the link in the upper right-hand corner of our website. If you want to find today's presentation, once the recording is posted, you'll go to Archived Presentations, and then you will click on 2024 Cyber and Physical Security Workshop. We do have the slides posted for today, but because it's mostly panels, there's not a whole lot of information there. We do have Mr. Cancell's slides there posted, though, if you'd like to see any of the material that he has for you. Just a quick reminder that we've got a few more events coming up this year in addition to our usual webinars. Starting on October 2nd, we're going to start our Ironman Sprint through the rest of the year. That's going to be 3 major events inside of 6 weeks. We've got our Winter Weatherization Workshop on October 2nd. On October 16th, we've got Understanding New Generator Obligations. So if anybody is new to the industry or they have anyone who is new to the industry, great place to send them. And then on November 20th, we are going to cap off our major events with our Fall Standard Security and Reliability Workshop. Registration for all of those events is open. I encourage you to get signed up in person if you'd like to come to those, except for the fall workshop. That's virtual only. If you'd like to follow us on social media, you can find us on LinkedIn, the social media site formerly known as Twitter, or Facebook. And without further ado, I will turn it over to our Vice President and Chief Operating Officer, Mr. Joseph Younger.
Thank you so much, Thad. Good morning, everyone. As Thad mentioned, my name is Joseph Younger, and I'm the Vice President and Chief Operating Officer here at Texas RE. I want to welcome each of you in the room, as well as everyone online, to Texas RE's Cyber and Physical Security Workshop. I want to thank at the outset all of the panelists, the moderators, and our keynote speaker, Manny Cancel, for taking the time to be a part of this workshop and provide us with their unique perspectives. I also want to thank Matt Barber and Thad Crow and the communications team for helping plan all the logistics for today's event, as well as Kenneth Carver, our Director of Compliance Assessments, and his team for playing such a big part in organizing the panels and identifying the topics and the questions. All the work that's gone into that, I think, is going to make this a really fulsome event for us. I'm very excited for it. Today's workshop is a continuation of a multi-year focus that Texas RE has had on several key risk areas. In our 2024 corporate goals and critical challenges, we highlighted 3 key reliability risks that we are prioritizing across all aspects of our program. First is grid transformation and IBR performance. Second is extreme events resiliency and winterization. And third is cyber and physical security. As part of this organizational focus on these risk areas, 2 years ago we held our first special event focused on extreme events resiliency. And then last year we did the same for grid transformation. So today we're turning our focus to the third key risk area, cyber and physical security. Cyber and physical security is central to our shared responsibility to have a secure and reliable bulk electric system. And it's indeed, as we're going to hear today, a challenging space. The electric industry is encountering unprecedented numbers of threats from ransomware, malware, supply chain vulnerabilities, and other risks. The ISAC estimates that the number of security vulnerabilities has more than doubled in the past 5 years. And just reading the reporting this morning about Volt Typhoon's activities to infiltrate internet service providers, to target persons of interest, should really bring home the unprecedented security challenges we're facing as an industry and really indeed as a nation. At the same time, we collectively recognize that the grid we're working on to secure is undergoing a fundamental transformation. The bulk power system is integrating new types of facilities, services, and technologies every day. The changes we're witnessing, in my opinion, are having two fundamental and lasting impacts on how we approach grid security. First, the grid's evolution is increasing the potential threat from coordinated attacks, exploiting critical infrastructure interdependencies, as well as cyber and physical vulnerabilities across a number of vectors. We recognize the increasing threat posed by coordinated physical and cybersecurity attacks to grid reliability. Just like OT and IT have converged, cyber and physical security need to be understood as fundamentally interdependent concepts and approached holistically, because the exploitation of one often has security implications for the other. We're seeing an uptick in physical attacks in particular. The ISAC has identified approximately 2,800 physical attacks on electric infrastructure in the past year, with around 70 of those having some measurable impact on grid reliability. In this region, in our assessment of reliability performance and analysis of regional risks, we highlighted the increase of physical attacks here and increased the risk around that particular element and increased our focus on that aspect. As we're also aware, critical infrastructure sectors are fundamentally interdependent. This past year, GridX7 focused on the response to a coordinated cyber and physical attack by a sophisticated and determined nation-state actor. The frighteningly realistic scenario targeted communications, electric, gas, and water facilities with a view towards pushing diverse sectors to resolve challenging coordination issues that such an attack would pose. I encourage everyone, if you haven't done so, to read the report that the EISAC released in early April around the lessons learned from the GridX7 exercise. And that highlighted the need to continue to coordinate restoration priorities across critical infrastructure sectors so that we can work in harmony to recover from such an event. To that end today, our first panel will focus on critical infrastructure, discussing the protection and resiliency of the energy sector and the interdependencies between electricity, oil, and gas sectors, among other important topics. The second theme I want to speak to is that these transformative changes in our cyber infrastructure are increasing the grid's overall cyber attack surface. All organizations are seeing more and more devices connected onto our networks. The wide availability of internet protocol-enabled devices, lower costs for commercial off-the-shelf software, the desire to increase efficiency of support services through remote access capabilities, and the overall push for operational efficiencies are all driving the increased connectivity between traditional OT systems that control and monitor physical devices on the grid and IT network infrastructure. This convergence is occurring at a time when we're also seeing dispersed management systems, including third-party owned control centers, playing an increasingly important role in monitoring and controlling a grid that is itself fundamentally decentralizing. The shift from traditional on-premises client-server business models to cloud-based off-premises solutions is further driving the expansion of cyber and even physical security concerns. The emergence and exponential growth of artificial intelligence that we're all reading about almost every day in the news promises to accelerate these trends and the security needs that are associated with them. These transformations mandate, again, a holistic approach to security that addresses vulnerabilities across business units and dispersed physical and logical geographies by integrating security policies, technologies, and controls. In this vein, our second panel will focus on the range of threats to our grid, exploring topics surrounding insider threats, foreign adversaries, ransomware, and the grid transformations security challenges for us. After lunch and mocktails, which we may all need, our third panel will focus on current and future electric grid technologies, looking at evolving technologies themselves from an industry perspective. And finally, we'll close out the day with a look at security posture, a panel that will explore key risks, strategies, policies, and resources utilized by organizations to maintain vigilant cyber and physical security stances with real-world insights on implementation and enhancing their programs. When we sat down to start planning this workshop almost a year ago, one of our explicit goals in exploring all these themes was to bring as many perspectives as possible to bear on this view, to see the challenges from the full range of perspectives. To that end, our workshop today features panels from Texas state officials, federal officials, the ERO enterprise, and industry to all offer their perspective on how we need to tackle these pervasive problems. The hope is by having these diverse actors together, we can facilitate a robust exchange of ideas and about the security challenges we're collectively working to address. So I'm excited to see the great agenda that the team has put together. I think we're going to have another outstanding day. And so to begin that and begin providing these perspectives, it's my pleasure to now introduce our keynote speaker, Manny Cancel. Manny is a senior vice president at NERC and the chief executive officer of the EISAC. He's responsible for the management and oversight of the EISAC and leading security operations and information sharing, threat intelligence and analysis, and stakeholder engagement initiatives designed to protect critical electricity infrastructure in North America. Manny also serves as the EISAC's key representative to important constituencies, such as the Electricity Subsector Coordinating Council, government partners, and key industry groups. He previously served as Con Edison's Chief Information Officer, where he led all aspects of IT and security and supported various industry initiatives, including serving as the chair of the sector's Cyber Mutual Assistance Program. Manny earned a bachelor's degree in business administration from Baruch College and a master's degree in business administration from the Johnson School at Cornell University. I'm a bit sad to say, and as many as you know, Manny has announced his retirement early next year. He's been a tremendous leader in our industry, and it's been a pleasure to work with him and learn from him over the years. I like Manny so much, I'm even willing to forgive the fact that he's a Mets fan, which is hard for me. So please give a warm welcome for our keynote speaker today, Manny Cancel.
Good morning, everybody. And if you don't mind, I'm going to stand up here because nervous Nelly like to walk around a bit. But great to be here with you this morning. Really is an honor to be here and deliver a keynote. I guess Matthew McConaughey wasn't available, so they picked me instead. But it's a pleasure to be here, and I do want to sincerely thank our colleagues at Texas RE. You know, whenever I give these kind of talks, I always like to start off with saying thank you, right? Thanks to all you who are really committed to protecting critical infrastructure, particularly electrical infrastructure in the United States, right? It's not an easy thing. I know it firsthand, having done it, and I'll talk a little bit about that as we go forward. But a big thanks. It's something that we have to stay focused on every day, and I know you do, right? So I'll talk a little bit about some of the challenges that we have. I will put in a gratuitous plug for the ISAC, so bear with me for a second. Then I'll talk about what I think got us here, the significant security events, and then give you an update on the rest of the landscape. And what I've tried to do is align my agenda to the agenda of the speakers. Maybe not perfectly, but try to tee up, not to steal any of their thunder, but maybe reinforce some of the things that we want to talk about. So, like I said, I'll talk about the ISAC. And I'm very happy to be at the ISAC and lead the ISAC through its 25th anniversary, right? Kind of hard to believe. So I try to tell people that I'm 25 years old, but they don't generally buy that. But pretty impressive that we've had a security organization that really is a clearinghouse for physical and cybersecurity information for the entire electricity enterprise in the United States and Canada. And we are a North American. We have members in Canada. We have many utilities, obviously, in the United States, and really the lion's share of the industry that are members of the ISAC. And I won't go through this timeline here, but a lot of things that have happened, and it's not because the ISAC existed, it's because our members helped build this. So Joseph referenced GridX. GridX is a program that we run. We throw this party every 2 years, but it really is the most comprehensive security drill, I think, in any industry, in any critical infrastructure industry. Matter of fact, we invite other critical infrastructure industries to participate. Joseph also mentioned things like cyber mutual assistance. We're involved in that too. And again, really a bespoke program for the electricity industry where utilities can lean on each other to get assistance if they need to. And again, I can go on, but I look forward to the next 25 years. I won't be here running the ISAC, but I'm sure there'll be somebody who'll do just as good a job, if not better. Just quickly, about 1,800 members of the ISAC, 1,600 are utilities, like I mentioned. 100% of the investor-owned utilities in the United States, the generation and transmission folks from public power, the large public power companies, right? 100% of those, and all the Canadian Crown companies. So in Canada, most of the utilities are owned by the government there. So that makes up over 85%, close to 95% of the metered customers, electricity customers in both the US and Canada that benefit from their companies being members of the ISAC. So something we stay focused on. Really want to increase our membership in the public power, probably in the small to medium and the municipally owned utility sector. We think there's an opportunity there, and it's something that we'll be focused on. And then the other opportunity at the bottom of the slide that I'll just talk about quickly is the grid is changing, right? With new renewable energy sources like IBRs, battery storage, and stuff like that. It's important that we start to bring them into the community as well. And so we can leverage their expertise from a security perspective too, right? And I'll talk about this as we go forward. As the grid changes, it's important that we inject security prospectively, not retrospectively, right? Not after something's happened, right? Because one, it's hard to recover. Two, it's more costly, right? So if we get ahead of things, we're generally better off as we go forward. And by the way, I neglected to mention, I am a fast-talking New Yorker and a Mets fan, sorry. But please feel free to interrupt me and ask me questions if you have any. So I will give you my slant on how we got here, right? And talk about, and I know you're all aware of these things, but I think these incidents, you really help to provide context. And if you get these slides, that significant security incidents line there is actually a link to the Center for Strategic and International Studies, right? Who track all sorts of security-related stuff, mostly on an academic and policy basis, but they've got a compendium there of security incidents, I believe, since 2003, and it's incredible. All the things that are there. You take for granted, and Joe McClellan and I were just talking about this. We deal with this every day. It's easy to take it for granted, almost be desensitized to it, right? When I read this thing, I kind of, put the covers over my head again and sort of said, wow, it's amazing what we come. But I'll start off with 9/11, right? And I was there. So I remember responding. I didn't go home that night. Brought radios and equipment to our crews that were helping to respond to the incident. But a watershed moment, really, from a security perspective. And a lot of people don't know, one of Con Edison's substations was crushed, ran right below one of the towers. Excuse me. And it wasn't a cybersecurity incident. It was a terrorist incident. It was an act of war. It was an attack. But what it started was a real focus on physical security protection for critical infrastructure. And the Public Service Commission in New York State, right after 9/11, started to get all the critical infrastructure utilities to focus on how do they do a better job protecting their assets. Now, hard to protect a substation from a building falling on top of it, right? But it was the spirit of it. And again, that started sort of a series of initiatives that continued, that were focused. Another thing about 9/11 that people don't realize, obviously, and if you're from New York like I am, or any place in the United States, everybody was affected by this. But the internet connections into New York City all came through that part of Manhattan. So almost every company, financial services, whatever sector you were in, lost internet services. And I remember that morning, it was a beautiful morning, and we were walking into it was budget time. We were walking into the meeting with our COO. And just as we were walking in, we get word that a plane had hit. And we still didn't know what had happened. But the phone stopped working. So when the phone stopped working, so I am an IT guy, immediately you start thinking about, all right, phones aren't working, internet is down, what the hell is going on here? And then we learned, the tragedy that occurred. But again, really set the stage for where security was going to go. The next is the blackout. I was there again too. So I'm not a bad penny that I turn up at all these events, but I remember being, and I had been, again, I'm born and raised in New York City. I'd been through other blackouts, but this was significant, right? We've all learned from that in this industry, and the ERO has really transformed things since the blackout and learned that. But again, the focus on security and resilience really comes out of that, right, from that incident. 5 days later, and I remember because I spent two nights in my office that week, was what was called the I Love You virus, or the Welch virus. Very similar to what we just saw a few weeks ago with CrowdStrike. So it was a worm that was a result of a vulnerability in Microsoft's products that just tied PCs up, and you couldn't do anything about it. And the only way to remedy this was you had to visit every PC. You had to visit every network device, every server, right? So, Con Ed is a pretty big company, tens of thousands of IT assets that had to be, remediated, right? Think of a global company, right? Everybody in the world got hit by this, right? And we kind of forget this. It was 21 years ago. But, really one of the watershed moments for cybersecurity, right? And has helped us sort of, refine what we do. Hurricane Sandy, again, not a cybersecurity, but a physical security, and reminds us how vulnerable we are to weather, right? And you know that here as well. So whether you believe in climate change or not, the electricity industry needs to respond to weather events, right? Have a strong history of responding to storms and getting better with restoration. We share resources to help restore and a lot of capabilities there. But this was a huge storm that impacted so much. The other big thing here was the reliance, and I'll talk about this more, of other critical infrastructure industries on electricity, right? So we had gasoline in New York. Nobody could pump gasoline because they had no electricity, right? So think about what that means not only to the population, but to the utilities that are trying to restore power, right? Hard to restore power where you can't even get to the place you have to restore, right? So I could talk about that forever. The bottom box there is the shadow brokers. And this is a Russian-based actor that stole a lot of the NSA's information. And there's a lot of books about this that talks about how they've used this to now even perpetrate the attacks that are being conducted now, right? Again, watershed moment. Ukraine on the top right, when Russia started to knock down the power systems in Ukraine. We're still learning from that. They're still doing that. Russia uses Ukraine as sort of a test bed, as a practice dummy, so to speak. I hate to use that term, but that's it. Then when you think you had enough and want to say, Uncle, SolarWinds happens in December of 2020. And this is really, again, the most prominent supply chain attack where, again, and what the bad guys have figured out is, I don't have to attack each one of you. I'm going to attack one thing that you all use. And SolarWinds is pervasively used as a network management platform, used as a SIP compliance platform. And I don't want to give these guys too much credit, but I was like, brilliant, brilliant. They just took care of one little thing, and they were able to get into the government's networks, into utility networks, into other critical infrastructure. And this is only going to continue. And that's one of the reasons I have this here. Ransomware, so Colonial Pipeline, and I won't drain that, but you all know what happened. Had that been a natural gas utility in the middle of the winter, we would have had much more severe consequences associated with that. Natural gas being a fuel that, that helps to generate electricity, right? And even today, you're probably getting word of a believed to be a ransomware attack at Seattle-Tacoma or the Port of Seattle and Seattle-Tacoma Airport, right? So this just continues, right? Again, adding insult to injury, physical security attacks. So I should probably have Metcalf, the Metcalf substation shooting up here. I don't. I have the shooting in Moore County, where again, whoever decided this was a good idea was able to disrupt power to about 40,000 people in Moore County. And again, these extremists know what they're doing. They know this is a way to advance, their ideology. Volt Typhoon, you heard Joseph talk about this, another demonstration of a nation state, in this case China, possessing the capability to disrupt critical infrastructure. And then lastly, CrowdStrike, what we just experienced, right? And very similar to the I Love You virus, right? Where all of a sudden PCs go blank, and blue screen of death, right? Had the most acute impact on aviation and hospitality, fortunately, and I can't knock on anything here, but not so much in the electricity industry. But again, a watershed moment that sort of reminds people, a lot of people who were affected were like, I didn't even know I used CrowdStrike. It was embedded in my cloud platforms, right? And it kind of talked about, again, the whole supply chain that we have to deal with. So, in summary, it's a complex environment. You know that, right? But it's becoming increasingly complex. And, it would be easy to sort of say, all right, put your hands up. But we do a lot, and we're still very well, I think, prepared to continue to respond to these things. Last things, not to just bury this point, is if you don't look at these sources, I would encourage you to do so. The known exploited vulnerabilities is CISA's catalog of exploitable vulnerabilities. About 1,200 of them exist now, right? Important to do this. And they're ranked, but it helps guide things that you should be paying attention to. And then the NIST National Vulnerability Database, and NIST tracks all vulnerabilities. We are on track for another third record year of vulnerabilities. So this is a double-edged sword. You're saying, wow, there's so many vulnerabilities. Well, it's good that they're being detected and reported, right? That's the silver lining in sort of seeing that. And then, again, I mentioned all this, the interconnected world. I just got a Wi-Fi washer and dryer, right? Why the hell do I need that? But, my toothbrush can talk to my phone. My car, there's apps to, I keep threatening my brother who's in the car business that I'm going to hack his car so the wiper fluid sprays on him instead of the windshield, But it's incredible, the interconnected of this. And again, the interconnectedness of critical infrastructure, and I know we have a panel talking about this, will, just continues to be reinforced and something that we have to pay attention to. So again, on the threat assessment side, I won't drain all this. Look, geopolitical threats continue to be consistent and will increase, right? And so every year, the Director of National Intelligence here in the United States and the head of the Canadian Cyber Center in Canada publishes a worldwide threat assessment. And if you rip the covers off both those documents, you think you're reading the same report, because it basically says the bad guys, Russia, China, North Korea, Iran, are the bad guys and absolutely possess the capability to disrupt critical infrastructure. And we're seeing this right now, right? We're seeing this play out right now. We're seeing Iran, very active in the election activity right now, breaking into the campaigns of both former President Trump and the current administration. So I mentioned supply chain on that previous slide, right? Supply chain, again, the guys have figured out the one-to-many problem. Let me attack a product, let me find a vulnerability in a product, and let me see what I could do. And the Chinese especially are very adept at taking advantage of this. But there are simple things too. If you hear Jen Easterly, the director of CISA, talk, she's of the opinion a lot of these attacks are pretty simple, right? And they actually are. And I mentioned before, I actually have a computer science background. When you look at what they do, it's not all that complex. But what they do is they take advantage of sloppiness, right? They take advantage of vulnerabilities. They take advantage of weaknesses in our network architecture. They take advantages in poor password management, not using multi-factor authentication. So it's sort of like having a house with, priceless works of art, but not locking the doors, right? Again, we sometimes enable these things, and again, our cyber programs need to continue to mature and get better to do that. And I mentioned ransomware. On physical security, 3% of incidents are grid impacting. And by grid impacting means it puts the network in some sort of operational contingency or results in an outage. So 3% may not sound like a lot, but if you have a significant number of people losing power, that's not a good thing, right? Most of that is ballistic damage, and we are almost certain that it is an act of sabotage. Again, people, and so that may sound like, really, no kidding. Well, no, there are signs that people are intent to sabotage the electric networks here. So something to pay attention to. And again, DVEs and other extremists will continue to use this. It's an arrow in their quiver. So we continue to pay attention to that as we go forward. And then lastly, from the threat assessment on the elections, right, something we're paying very, very close attention to, working very closely with the government. But all the nation states are looking to spread misinformation and do whatever they can to sort of influence things. We'll see how this plays out, and we'll track this throughout the election cycle. And I mentioned the use of, physical security threats. AI is playing a role in this, as you probably know. Misinformation, AI is useful in generating misinformation. And then also targeting poor election workers, right? What's called doxing, making them feel bad, putting out information about their public life out there, right? So all this stuff will continue and stuff that we need to pay attention to. So let me stop there, see if there are any questions on sort of threat assessment. Okay, let me move on. So we're not the only ones. That's not a great thing, but there is strength. The concept of strength in numbers, at least to me, is beneficial. And I work very closely with people in other critical infrastructure sectors, with the heads of the other ISACs, and we are facing the same threats. Maybe different flavors, but it's good to see what they're facing. So particularly when you talk to financial services companies who are global, aviation companies who are global, they have a slightly different perspective, right? It's been very useful to talk to them throughout the Ukraine conflict because many of them have installations in Ukraine, right? So we can learn, and that's good there. So punchline here is regular collaboration, information sharing, not only across the ISACs, but across critical infrastructure and the government is important. You can't protect what you don't see. You can't protect what you don't know about, right? So it is important that we do that. The electricity industry has a long history of drills, physical drills like storm restoration drills, but I mentioned GridX that we conduct every 2 years. And every time, so I've been through every GridX. as a player, when I was at Con Ed, and then I've gotten to throw the last 3 parties. And my hair always hurts after those exercises, but it again, we always come up with new stuff, that either reinforce what we're doing or identify new things. And again, one of the things that's been reinforced throughout GridX is the critical interdependency of critical infrastructure sectors, right? The other thing I'd say here that's important when you look at policy changes, cyber incident reporting, which is still undergoing comment, but again, kind of gets under, when you think about the spirit of it, for information sharing, it's important, right? And we will likely be required to share information about key cybersecurity incidents. And certainly for publicly traded companies, disclosing on their financial documents any cyber incidents. And again, it's important, right? So we learn from each other. Current and future grid technologies. I know we have this panel, a lot about the cloud and virtualization. And even though I work with NERC, and I want to be sure, we like the cloud. Cloud is good. Just has to be secure, right? Like everything else, like new generating sources, new energy sources. What I said before is really the point I want to drive home. Building security prospectively is a lot easier than building security retrospectively, right? It's costly, it's harder, you're generally recovering from a problem. And then I'll just touch on AI. And AI is look, like any new technology, and most of you younger than me, but I remember when the internet just got started, right? And think about all the benefits that we've gotten from the internet, right? And there have been tremendous benefits. Telehealth, increased connectivity, virtual meetings, right? Probably wouldn't have made it through the pandemic without the internet, right? But what else has the internet brought? Phishing scams, ransomware, other organized crime, exploitation of vulnerabilities that are used in cyber attacks. So there's the yin and the yang. Artificial intelligence is going to play out the same way, right? Huge benefits and opportunities and some big risks, right? It'll make hacking easier. And as I mentioned before, the adversaries are using it to spread misinformation as part of the election campaigns, right? You can send out phishing emails. You could target people. It does make it easier. The corollary to that is it makes detection easier, right? You can start to, if you can mine logs and start to really understand this, you might be able to understand what the adversaries are doing. And this is especially critical because our adversaries are increasingly stealthy, right? They don't get into your network and say, hey, I'm here. Can I have a drink? No, they stay there and they stay dormant. And then they decide when they want to take advantage of things. So again, I look forward to seeing the benefits that artificial intelligence will bring as we go forward. And on posture, look, I don't want to drain this as well too, and I know the panel will talk about this. Big proponent of information sharing. No surprise, I run an information sharing and analysis center, right? But, information sharing, ideally without attribution, so we can learn what's going on and maintain situational awareness, to me, is critical. Without that, you might as well go home, right? This concept of zero trust, and if I asked every one of you what zero trust is, I'd get a different answer. But it basically is, don't trust anybody, right? And as you traverse across the network, you make somebody re-authenticate or prove they are who they are, or they are the asset that they claim to be, right? Now, truth be told, the bad guys will figure out how to get around that. But, the concepts of zero trust are not just aspirational. They make a lot of sense. It's costly. You need the community, the technology community, to start to build this in even more. And you're seeing this through initiatives like Secure by Design that CISA is really pushing, and rightfully so. But that's important. And I mentioned these other two policy initiatives that are going at the bottom of the slide, but I think important as we go forward. So I know I said a mouthful there, provided a lot. Hopefully I'm still on time here, but happy to take any questions that you may have.
There you go. Folks, this might be your last chance. Manny is retiring soon. Don't be shy. We don't have any lined up on Slido just yet. And seeing as we don't have any, I will.
One over here.
Yeah. Stand by. Here we go.
guess this is how Thad gets his exercise.
One thing I've worried about that I don't know if anybody else worries about is a very simple physical attack where in a major city you drop all the high power lines across the freeways at rush hour, and you distribute you hit the grid because you're dropping the high voltage lines, and you disrupt the city because the lines are across the interstates and traffic is messed up and it's a major mess. Does anybody worry about that kind of attack as well?
So I'll answer that question. The answer is yes, every day, right? That is, from the bulk power side and the reliability side, that is NERC's mission, and we worry about that. The physical security standards that are part of the NERC SIP standards, and Lonnie is here someplace who can probably help me out, help to provide that. Now, at the end of the day, if there's a large-scale kinetic attack, an act of war, that starts to bring down transmission lines into a major city, kind of hard to respond to that. But we do work on things like that. As part of the GridX drills, we do that. I think the other thing I would say to your question, I think the other panels will touch on this. When you walk into NERC's offices, there are 3 words: security, reliability, and then resilience in the middle. And the way I like to think about it is security and reliability are what enable resilience. And if you design your networks to be more tolerant of things like that, right? A good example is the Moore County shooting, right? That could have been a lot worse. The way the networks were architected sort of protected some of that. I'm not saying it was a good thing for 40,000 people to lose power, but you have to think about that because you can't protect everything from ballistic damage. But how do you architect networks to be more resilient and tolerant, I think is the game there. So, 2 more questions, I think.
No, I was going to say, if you're talking about dropping power lines, look at what Entergy, where they tried to do it about 10 years ago.
Listen, I had 1 slide. I could have filled up 50 slides with things like that. Energy, Metcalf, all those sort of things, right? This gentleman? Oh.
So would you say that the thought should be more of how do you recover from those kinds of things and design that that resilience in, rather than how am I going to recover after the fact, or this is my magic bullet that protects everything?
Yeah, so I think you do the best you can, and the hallmarks of any mature cyber or even physical security is, number 1 is prevent. What can I do to prevent this from happening? But recognizing that you can't prevent, 1, I got to be able to detect it and detect it fast. And then I have to put the wheels in motion to recover, right? And then after the fact, how do I build a better mousetrap? So again, can I make a more fault tolerant system, right? Can I do something else? Can I switch to a backup, right? People talk about the cloud being a risk. Yeah, the cloud's a risk because the attack vector is much bigger. Cloud also offers a great deal of resilience, right? You can go to another data center in the cloud like that, right? Now I'm not advocating you should put everything in the cloud because that's not a good idea either. But, right, it is understanding or looking at stuff through that lens. But that's the point. Yeah. Well, I think I've taken my time. You can catch me on LinkedIn. Joseph and the Texas RE team have my email information. Please don't hesitate to reach out. Thank you for the time this morning, and enjoy the rest of the conference.
Well, thank you very much, Manny Cancel, sir. All right, folks, something that I neglected to mention at the intro. We've got some cameras set up in the back of the room. Do your best to avoid those if you come back after the break a little bit late and need to sit back down. We are going to adjourn until 10 a.m., so feel free to go to the bathroom, get a drink, ask me any questions if you have any, but we'll see you at 10.